Hello everybody, my name is Greg. I am one half of Development Studio Whet, and today I'm going to take you through a user case for our upcoming Unity plugin, the Context Dialog System. This is using version 090. We are very close to our first public beta, and I'm going to today show you an example of a 3D RPG game. So, first thing we'll do is load up Unity and get started here. A quick note, this plugin supports Unity versions 5.40 F3 and beyond. We've tested it up to 2017.2. 2017.3 is imminent as this video, and from what I've seen so far, it should still work fine. So we are trying to keep as current as we possibly can. And so I'm currently testing here on the oldest version, which is 5.40. What I'll do is I'll start with my game. This video is to show you how easy it would be to take an existing project that you may be working on and to bring our plugin in and install it and use it. So I'm going to start with an example that we have up on our wiki. By the way, our wiki is at whetgames.com, spelled HWAET games. The wiki link is up on the top, and when you go there, you'll be greeted by our documentation for this plugin, and within that we have several game styles, examples of how this plugin can be used, and today we are doing the third-person RPG one. So we will start with an example project of basically a character that is walking around a very simple scene and has a couple objects and an NPC that he can interact with. This is a Unity package that we have put up. You can grab this and use it if you would like to practice. It's very, very simple. Third person RPG here, and I'm really far away, so I focus in. There we go. So here we have a very simple scene. See, we have a player object. These, by the way, are using assets from Kenny's game asset website. I believe this website is kenny.nl. Just double check that real quick and make sure that I'm giving the proper address. Yes, kenny.nl. His developer has made many resources freely available. If you're unaware of his stuff, I highly recommend you check him out. In this scene here, aside from our player character, we have our set geometry. We have a guy, pedals guy, and he's just sitting on a stump here. We also have several physics colliders spread throughout the scene. Hopefully they're visible on the recording here. But there's a collider around a tree, this tree, and the tent. And these are things that, since they are physics colliders, we can actually collide with, interact with, and use those to trigger different dialogue objects. So, let's say that this is a project and we want to add a dialogue to it. First thing to do would be to bring in our plugin. But before I do that, one thing to note is that this plugin requires you to call it. And to do that, that depends on your project. You could be doing a choose your own adventure game, which would be an entirely different method from first-person shooter or a 3D RPG. How you choose to call the plugin is entirely up to you. In this particular example, I'm going to be calling it by running around as my player, interacting by touching the E key on my keyboard. So if I wail on the E button, I want to be able to interact with things. Right now in this project, I don't know if I have that set up. The first object to go to the input manager of Unity, make sure that I have interact set up. Turns out it is right here. But let's pretend it's not. This would be the default Unity setup. I'm just going to add one more key, input manager. I call it interact. The positive button E, typically used in first-person control scheme. So that's set up. I can now call my interact button, and I can scripts, and now I will go ahead and bring in the dialog plugin. It's in as a package, and you'll see that it comes with 2 DLL files and some resources to help you kickstart your project. We have a separate video that covers all of the components that come in with this package, so if you're curious about what all these different components do, I highly recommend you check that out, or take a look at the wiki because we are trying to document these. Okay. guy here. Goes in. Alright, so now my dialogues plugin is loaded, and I am, as soon as it catches up, I am ready to go. So I've loaded in my, and now I want to create my dialogue manager. So I'm going to create an empty game object. I'm going to call this my dialogue manager, and this is going to be the crux of what manages all the dialogue in this particular scene. To add a dialogue manager component to this object, this is going to be the main crux of how all this dialogue stuff works together. You'll notice it's created an event system, spawning canvases for the player to interact with. And okay, so the dialogue manager has a resources. The resources section here is basically to keep track of all art and sprites and audio files, actual dialogue database files that you're using with this particular project. You notice when it comes in, first drop a dialogue manager, there is nothing in here. This component will take a look at your resources folder. Which if you down here, you see that I actually have a couple canvases that came in by default, and I have a dialogue test database file, which also comes in by default. Those resources will be loaded by the dialogue manager. As soon as the game starts first frame, it does a quick check, and anything in the resource that is compatible, it will add to your collection. If you want to, you can also add something manually, just by adding them the way, or you can add them programmatically. That's up to you. As you can see, I have some dialogue canvases, and I have a test dialogue file. This is going to be the topic of a different talk, because the way in which our dialogue system approaching managing all this data is slightly different from the usual tree-based dialogues that you'll find in Asset Store. To summarize it really quickly, our dialogue is stored in a flat list. In this case, we are storing it in XML flat structure, where it is a giant data container that contains a bunch of dialogue objects, and each one has a series of lines of data that we can use to give context to that line of dialogue. See here, I have several lines. I have 4, titled Test 2, Test 1, Test Forget, and Test Choices. These are just different cases that I can show you on how to actually call dialogue and modify them. So let's say Test 1 will be the one that will be first. Concept intro. Go over all the different possibilities and features of dialogue database later on. Now, suffice it to say, we have a couple objects loaded in here. Now I'm going to create a script that will trigger this dialogue system. This particular kind of game, what I would want is for there to be a script on the player object, so that every time I press E, that player object will find the dialogue manager and say, hey, I am here, I am doing a thing, call the dialogue system. Figure out what line of dialogue is most appropriate for where I am right now. So start that by selecting the player object, to create script, and let's call it talk script, and bring up MonoDevelop. I'm a dinosaur who still uses MonoDevelop. That Visual Studio is better. Sorry. I have habits. So, public class talk script. We're going to start by adding a couple of variables in. Start by saying private game object aim at. What I'm going to do on this script, it's going to track any object that my character is currently looking at. So I'm going to just store that value in a variable here. I'm also going to I'm going to add a dialogue manager object called dialogue manager. Very creative. Ooh, it's red. It's red because everything in the CDS plugin is in a separate namespace. We namespaced it all to keep it from stepping on anyone's code. We have a whole bunch of helper functions, and we don't want generically named functions to cause problems. So any script that you write that is going to be calling context dialogue code, you want to be adding a CDS top of your script here. So I'm going to dialogue manager object. And also, I don't want characters to be able to talk to people who are a million miles away, so I'm going to add in couple variables to help track how far away an object is. And I'd also like to add in a debug flag to let me see what's going on. So I'm going to add a public float of talk range. I'm going to say that's going to be 3.5 units away. That seems like a good distance. These characters are not super big. I don't remember the exact scale that this game is running at. Scene is running. I add a quick cube. Actually, these characters are about a unit and a half if this box is 1 unit big. They're pretty small. The 3.5 units should be fine. So that'll be my range, and I'm also going to add a little checkbox to say public bool show talk range raycast. Why not? Is true. Okay, and since I'm going to be doing raycasting for player's camera, I'm going to add a very poorly named ray variable. Really poorly named variable. So now, I don't think I'm going to start. I could, on the start frame, I could have it look for any dialog managers if not currently assigned. Let's just assign it manually and deal with that in the proper way. So if I take a look at the script that's in my player, I'm going to start by assigning that dialog manager, make sure that is there. No errors in my console. Good. Now we continue. Now I'm going to say every frame I'm going to be checking to see what the player is actually doing. Let's check for player interaction. We're going to make a void check for player interaction function, and this is where going to be the neat player interaction happens with regard to the dialog system. First things first, you need to actually have a dialog manager to do any of this stuff. So I'm just going to say if dialog manager is equal to null, return, kind of halt and stop everything. And I'm also going to tell myself that I made a mistake. Please assign a dialog manager object. Okay, so that's just a safety statement. It's always good to make sure that you don't have any null reference exceptions in your code. That would be a problem. Okay, so let's assuming that this function has got this far, and it knows that I have a dialog manager assigned. Now it's going to actually do a raycast. So I'm going to do add vector 3. I'm going to find the current screen point of the player's current view. Say view vector 3 screen, middle of the screen width, screen width divided by 2, and screen height divided by 2, and it's going to have 0 because we're on the actual screen itself. Do is my ray that I declared beforehand. I'm going to take the main camera, which you can find by using the camera main, and I'm going to call the screen point to ray function of camera main. I'm going to pass it that center screen value. This is going to run every frame, and that's fine because if the user is doing some funky thing with a window mode in your game, or they're changing the resolution, it's not going to fall out of whack. Might not be the most performant, but it works for this example. And now I'm going to say if my debug flag up above is true, let's actually show that ray just so that I can visually inspect what I'm doing and make sure that I'm going off the deep end. So I'm going to add a debug draw ray call. I'm going to say ray.origin, ray.direction. I'm going to actually, since we're casting this 3.5 units away, I'm just going to be the same size of what we're casting. Get a color. Let's make it red. Okay. Oh, take a look at my gameplay here. Take a second to catch up. Here, play. You will see now that there is a visible in the recording. There is a red ray being cast from my camera. It's hovering over the main character. It is showing what is lined up with my cursor in the middle. So if I'm aiming at this NPC's head, see the red bisecting his face quite nicely. So that's how I can be sure that I'm recasting onto the right object and make sure that I'm targeting the right guy when I'm getting my dialogue. That works. That's good. No errors in the console. Continue. And here's the meat of the actual dialogue system, the call that's going to happen interacting with. So I'm going to say if input get button down. You want get button down and not get button, because if you just do get button, it will call this every frame and your dialogue will zoom by at the speed of light. Get button down, and I called my E button interact in the input manager. Say if input get button down. Say if the button is pressed, let's do a raycast. If physics dot raycast, not raycast. I'm gonna do ray. Take the result of that and put it into my variable. Range is going to match with what I'm casting. Debug display. If that is a hit, I'm going to populate my AMAT variable that I declared earlier with the game object that has a collider. So now what's going to happen is when I tap on the E on my keyboard, I should see this AMAT variable display. Take a look at my player here. And my AMAT variable is a private variable, so I'm just going to enable debug mode really quickly. See here that grayed out is that variable. Right now it says none. So if I walk over here, I look at my guy, and I tap on E, you can see right now it says AMAT is equal to guy. So it knows that I have tried to interact with guy. You can go over to the tent, you can try to interact with the tent, and you can see that value updates. Good, we're working so far. Last step would be to actually call the dialog system. Say if AMAT, my NPC is tagged, I believe. If I take a look at Guy, I can see he has a tag of NPC. That's nice. So I'm going to say if AMAT compare tag PC. You don't have to use tags, but this is just a quick way for me to differentiate between PC and rocks in the trees. I'm going to take the dialog manager that I've declared earlier, and I'll call the create dialog function. The create dialog function accepts two string values. One is the concept, and one is the who. These are two very important behind the dialog system. The concept is how you take everything in your database, dialog database, split it up into sections of each other. For example, all dialogue at a particular level might be part of a single concept. For all dialogue, byte sequence concept, and you can even go more granular. It's up to you, and if you're a specific game writer, whichever way you're comfortable working with. But it's just a organizational to keep the system light on its feet, and also to keep you sane when you're pitching large numbers of dialogues. And the who is also an important condition. The who is speaking. So the dialog system knows where to create this dialogue. If you don't give it a who, just assume the dialog manager itself is speaking across the entire game. In this case, I'm going to be talking to my NPC. So I'm going to say the name of my AMAT object, which I know is Guy. And I'm going to say a concept, I believe it's intro. do a real quick check. There's a custom editor window for the dialog manager. You can inspect in this manager contents of your dialog database. You can see here it displays a flat list. Test 1, test 2, test forget, test choices. This is the kind of parsed version of the XML file I showed you earlier. See here that the conditions for this line of dialog that get called is that concept is equal to intro. It should also say that who is equal to guy. The conditions are separated by a semicolon. Add as many as you like. More the better, because the more specific you are targeting context-based dialog, relevant it will seem, organic it will feel to players. There will be a separate video talking about all the other cool features that each line of dialog can contain. Right now we're just going to go over a basic example of finding the right line and displaying it on the screen. I have modified this, so I'm going to save that. Okay, so now take a look at I called create dialog. It's a name, concept intro. Very good. Now, see if I go around and interact with Guy, you'll notice that text appears on the screen. Hey, I have on my dialog manager, I have allow repeats is checked, so I can go and, since the context of the game hasn't changed, no character states have changed, it would query the same line over again. So I'm just going to pause the game real quick, show you what's happening when this happens. So the dialog system has run a query. It found that this line, greetings, this test tool, that this line is the most relevant at this particular point in time. It found that line and returned it to the dialog manager and said, display this. Dialog manager then creates a dialog group that doesn't already exist in your scene. It instances a canvas, which has, there we go. It instances a canvas, which has some very simple objects on it, including our custom CDS text object. This looks funny because I'm in debug mode. Normal, you can see this looks text object. Change that, step forward a frame. There we go. And so what I've done is basically instance this this canvas, which is one of my default. I believe it is the default canvas right here, since I'm not sure anything else was actually provided. And then very no frills. What you would want to do in your project is you would want to art direct a particular kind of canvas, something that looks good that follows the style of the rest of your project, to call that. So let's say, as a final example in this project, I'm going to take choices canvas. I'm going to make it ever so slightly. Choices. Do take that default that we some to make it purple. I don't have any other art assets budgets, so all I have is default Unity. Not very pretty. But let's say this is the that you were going for. To also say that I wanted to add in a character name to my dialogue, so I'm going to this a little bit see better. I'm going to add our panel just in a regular GUI panel top here, and Unity CDS label is the same thing as Unity text. The difference between this and Unity text object is that when a dialog is spawned, it will look for a who value and place it here. This can be something that you can character names. Say our best fit to make fill center it really big. Now I have a prefab canvas that's going to be my default, and it is purple, and it has a giant top that says who is speaking. Apply, just that prefab. Back into my game, talk to Mr. Guy again, and see what happens. Boom. You can see here that the guy's name has been populated in that field, and the lines of dialogue have been populated in this text object as well. Obviously, much more art is needed to make this viable game, but for the purposes of demonstration, this should cover the basics of getting dialogue started. This example is available on our website. You can download it and step through it. The site actually contains full step-by-step coverage of what we just went through. If I can again, so you can follow the steps and do what we've just done. I also have provided the scripts, which will be available in the description below. And you can grab those. You'll see that there's a couple extra features in the talk script that I've written, example, where I can also have the dialogue get triggered. Character walks into a trigger volume or interacts with non-NPC objects. The ways in which you can call the dialogue system are limited only by the form itself. So that we will wrap up our demonstration of the 3D RPG. I hope you found this informative, and as always, if there's any questions or feedback about the plugin, please contact us. Drop a comment, send us a line through our website or through Twitter, and we will happily respond because we love hearing about stuff that's going on. The tools we've written. Guys, take care.